What is going on YouTube? Lou here. It is almost 2:30 in the morning. I am freaking exhausted, but I cannot sleep, so I decided to give you guys an update video and let you know kind of where I stand as far as tech is concerned these days, because I think as far as the whole Linux community is concerned, by and large, a lot of us are kind of finding ourselves in a conundrum. We don't know what distribution we should be on, what user interface we should be running. So, I'm going to let you guys know where I am today, kind of why I'm there, and we'll go from there. But as you can see, I am running gnome-shell, and you're also going to notice that I am not running Ubuntu. What I am running, and for whatever reason, I don't think it's going to show it now, but I'm running Fedora 15 Lovelock, and I've got GNOME 3.0.1. I've got my own kernel that I put together for it, and I'm running gnome-shell, and I'm loving every minute of it. I'm going to be honest, I really, really, really enjoy using gnome-shell. I love it. It really is conducive to how I like to work. I think that the GNOME team did an amazing job on this project. I think that they finally built a desktop environment that is sleek, it is sexy, it is functional, it's expandable. I mean, gnome-shell is very much a 1.0 release in my opinion right now, but because of the way that it was put together, the community is already jumping behind it, putting development into it, and it's only going to get better and better. One of the biggest criticisms is that the gnome-shell environment, as well as Unity, really, from Ubuntu, are largely developed for tablets or touch devices. And, I can see that being put into these projects, but you know what? The market for tablets and touch devices is just getting bigger and bigger. And I think if they can find a really nice middle ground, you're going to be able to have something that you can use on your desktop and you can use on your tablet on the go, and it's all the same thing. I mean, what do we have now? I've got an Android device and I've got a Linux desktop, but my Android device uses different apps than my Linux desktop, and they use different interfaces. And what if you could have the same operating system on every one of your devices? What would happen if you could use the same applications on your desktop as you could on your handheld, as you could on your tablet? And I think that if the GNOME team can really continue to develop the way that they are, gnome-shell, they're going to have an all-around amazing operating system that aesthetically looks amazing and has a ton of functionality. I mean, this is a desktop that is very modern. It looks like something that you would use today. One of my biggest gripes, and I'm going to kind of get into this as the video goes on, is Linux to me always felt like something that was out of the Stone Age. I mean, I know that a lot of this stuff is done predominantly in people's free time, but I just wish we had more graphic designers sometimes, as opposed to everyone being a developer, because Linux really needed a facelift, and GNOME did an amazing job. I think that if you look at these icons, they have an awesome icon set. They're full of color. They've got great resolution. The gnome-shell interface is beautiful. It just really is. They've got all these really nice semi-transparent black menus. They've got these nice updated icons. I'm really happy that they went with this nice black theme with the white icons. I think it stands out a lot. If they decide to move to portable devices, it'll help save on battery life. Got this really nice looking dash right here. Got this really gorgeous animation when you click on your activities up here in the top left hand corner. You've got this nice panel that auto hides down here at the bottom with some applets, and I'm really excited for GNOME 3.2. They got some nice innovations that they're going to be working here into the dash, as well as nice hardware integrations that they're going to be working into the shell. I installed Fedora 16, and they're already implementing some of those into gnome-shell, and it looks like it's going to be an amazing release. So let's cut to the chase. Why did I switch to start using Fedora. And let me get this out there and say, I don't. This is not going to turn into a distribution war. People get way too emotional when it comes to that. Yes, I'm using Fedora in gnome-shell today. I may be using something different next week. I may be on Debian, using KDE. Who knows? Not a KDE fan, by the way, but if someone is, that's great. Whatever works for you. One of the nice things about being a Linux user is we have a lot of options. Some people say that is to our detriment, but in this case, I had an option. I didn't like what Ubuntu was doing right now. Not to say that I won't like it at some point in the future, but as of right now, it's not conducive to productivity for me. But I was able to find something else that worked. If you're a Windows user or even a Mac user, you can't go out and find something different. You're stuck with that one option. We have options. So what are some of the reasons why I went with Fedora? If you were to come over and open up, let's see here, we're going to go to DistroWatch. If you were to go to DistroWatch, you're going to find right over here, you're going to see that we've got Ubuntu in the #1 spot. They've been there for a very long time. We've got Mint in #2. You might as well just call it Ubuntu because Mint's an Ubuntu variant. So we've got Ubuntu in the #1 spot, and then you've got Fedora. And so Fedora is the second most popular or widely used distribution out there. Okay, so it's second largest distribution to Ubuntu. It has a large precompiled software selection. Now, I have the RPM Fusion repository listed here. That's because, much like Ubuntu doesn't include a lot of these multimedia codecs within their installation necessarily because of licensing and copyright and all those sorts of technicalities. However, they give you the option to install during setup. Fedora does not do that. However, you can still get these things installed very easily. There's a little project out there that puts out an application called Auto Plus for Fedora. It's a 32 and 64-bit versions. It allows you with these one-click installs to install Flash, MP3, DVD codecs. It's got a nice little bundled codec feature, Google Earth, Skype. We got a couple of scripts here, some extra backgrounds, light scribe technology, VirtualBox, Java, Dropbox. So, it's a nice little app that installs mostly everything you're going to need that doesn't already come installed with Fedora. One of the nice things about Fedora, just as an aside, was I installed using a live CD. It was about 500 and I think it was like 25 megabytes. I've already installed some of the most common apps that I use on a regular basis, but it doesn't have a lot of software out of the box. I really like that because I want to install what I like, not necessarily have it come with a ton of stuff. I think that Ubuntu comes a little bit too much. I would rather them kind of slim it down. But the only thing I took out right after I installed Fedora was Rhythmbox. I prefer Banshee, so I went ahead and I installed Banshee. But and since then, I've installed some other apps. I got LibreOffice in here. I've got Tomboy Notes, Sound Converter, VLC. What else? Dropbox I put in. Auto Plus, of course. Audacity, GIMP. These are some of the things I use on a very regular basis. It's missing some applications, but this is a fresh install that I just did a couple hours ago, so I still got a lot of work to do. But there's a large software selection. However, there is no software center like Ubuntu has. So if you're new to Linux and you prefer searching for applications in a software center, I actually don't. I never use a software center in Ubuntu. I actually, if I'm looking for a particular piece of software, I'd rather just go to the web and read some reviews on it than rely on the software center. What I'll do is I'll find what I want online and then check the software center to see if they have it. So that's what I do. But there is a large pre-compiled software selection. RPM Fusion's a great repository for any type of multimedia stuff that you want to do. But I do find that I've had to put a few applications together. I've had to compile from source because it wasn't available in the Fedora repos. It wasn't available in the RPM Fusion repos, so I had to compile from source. We're going to kind of get into a few of the cons, but a little bit later. But as far as an RPM-based distribution, which Fedora is, much like OpenSUSE, much like CentOS, there's a large precompiled software selection. I'll give you an example. When you want a piece of software, especially from Linux, if it's a popular piece of software and you're lucky enough that there's a Linux version, Dropbox is a perfect example. You go to Dropbox's website. What are the two distributions that they have software for? Ubuntu and Fedora. And this is a perfect example, and it kind of just sums up, your two top options. So I wanted to go with something that I was going to be able to find a decent amount of precompiled software for, that I wasn't constantly having to compile the stuff I wanted from source, because it's just a pain. I can do it. I don't mind doing it. I just don't want to have to all the time. So especially because I like to test out apps a lot. I like to, test out different types of distribution variants. So I'm constantly setting up systems, and it's a pain to have to compile everything from source. One of the other things that I really like about Fedora is there's a large focus on innovation and deployment of new Linux standards with continued development both by the Fedora team as well as a large user base and community. Fedora is backed by Red Hat. They have a large user base and community that is in constant development for them, and that really helps. A lot of people don't like large projects that are backed by large corporations. Microsoft, Apple. There's a big difference between I think some of these Linux projects as opposed to Microsoft and Apple. Something like, for instance here, Linux Mint. I love Linux Mint. What worries me about Linux Mint is there's one or two guys, mainly one, that runs this whole huge project. You see DistroWatch, there's Mint. Mint's way up there. Look at all those users. Mint is a huge project. If that guy has a bad day, if he's sick for a week, that's going to put the brakes on that project. When you've got a company like Red Hat or the large development community that Fedora has, or even say Canonical with Ubuntu, someone calls in sick to work, work's still going to get done that day. And when it comes to someone who uses their computer quite a bit like me, I don't want to get too attached to a distribution and have it gone tomorrow. So again, I love Linux Mint, but one of the reasons why I chose Fedora is for that very reason. Also, I like the direction they're going. They focus on a lot of performance enhancements, under the hood stuff that you don't necessarily see. Right now Canonical and Ubuntu is focused on their user interface, the Unity interface, whereas Fedora is implementing things under the hood. And a lot of the stuff that they try to implement, they want to implement as Linux standards. What's so great about having all these different projects going on is when someone comes up with something great, it can help everyone in the community. It can be introduced as a new standard. And I think that's what Fedora tries to do, and they come at it from a performance aspect, and I really like that. They're standing behind GNOME 3 and gnome-shell. I got my hands on Fedora 16. There's an alpha out right now. I believe it's RC5, and I really like what they're doing with gnome-shell, and I like what they're doing under the hood. A lot of work going in under the hood on that. So they're not trying to create a custom version of gnome-shell. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel. However, they're focusing largely on performance and under the hood and letting gnome-shell just be awesome. So I really like that direction that they're going in. Now, I get what Ubuntu's doing as far as creating their own custom shell, and I respect them for that. With the old, say, even GNOME 2.x, if you were to pick up, say, a Debian-based distribution or an Ubuntu-based distribution, 80-90% of that distribution looks identical to Ubuntu. Why? Because the UI is the exact same, GNOME 2. Whatever. And so, there's nothing that set it apart, really, from a lot of its variants. So, Ubuntu said, we want to create our own thing. and we want to be different, and we want to be unique, and I really respect that. I don't really like what they're doing, but I respect all of the reasoning behind it and the thought process behind it. And even though I don't like what they're doing now, I may like what they're doing in the future. But these are some of the reasons why I moved away. I don't like the Unity shell. They've got that really obtrusive Unity kind of dock over here on the side. They don't really have a lot of options as to what you can do with it. They got that auto hide feature and a couple other things, but not enough in my opinion. For crying out loud, the UI, hire a decent graphic designer. God, I think Ubuntu is ridiculously ugly. The color schemes that they use, I can't stand it. I mean, I may get this argument that computers about work and blah, 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 but I mean, we sit here looking at these computer screens constantly, and we're doing work on them. They should be aesthetically pleasing. When I was a Mac user, one of the things I loved the most about OS X was how elegant it was. One of the things that I really like about Linux Mint is how elegant they were able to make Ubuntu, and they were really able to change it into an elegant desktop. And so much so that it drew me, it made my decision to leave OS X that much easier. So, like I said, I think gnome-shell looks like a modern desktop, something you would use today. It's got a great user interface, and a lot went into the design, and I really appreciate that. I think Unity itself is, especially the newest revision as of a few days ago, with that huge Ubuntu logo kind of start button. Man, it's horrific. It looks terrible. I mean, we need to take a few developers, turn them into graphic designers, because Linux needs it. One of my biggest gripes about Linux for years was it looked like something that was out of the 70s. It didn't look modern, and that's what I loved about OS X. But I think that gnome-shell here, I think they nailed it. The GNOME guys nailed it. Also, what worries me about Ubuntu is the possible lack of support for gnome-shell. I mean, they're obviously going to be taking all of their resources and effort and focusing it on Unity. They're not going to be focusing it on fixing that gnome-shell bug. And gnome-shell is my preferred user interface, so I don't want to deal with the possibility of having a buggy desktop in the future with a team that doesn't want to take any of their resources away from their project, which is understandable, to fix gnome-shell. However, again, you've got Fedora standing behind GNOME 3 and gnome-shell, and they're excited to work with the GNOME team to implement a lot of the new features that GNOME's coming out with in the future. And Fedora 16 as well as GNOME 3.2 are going to be together in the next release. And I think Fedora's doing a lot of work under the hood to support a lot of the really amazing features in gnome-shell. So, that's another reason why that I'm not thrilled with the direction Ubuntu's going now. And again, they have a focus on their UI rather than the performance under the hood and development under the hood. And, for me, there needs to be a nice marriage of the two. There needs to be a nice, aesthetically pleasing user interface and environment to work in, as well as some nice performance under the hood. I think Fedora's nailed it. Some of the things that I definitely miss about a Debian-based system, such as Ubuntu or even Debian itself, I miss Synaptic Package Manager, because this add remove software just doesn't cut the mustard. Alright, just doesn't cut the mustard for me. Cannot even step in the ring with Synaptic, in my opinion. Synaptic being the graphical front end for apt. Yum isn't bad. I don't mind using Yum, and actually my migration over to Fedora wasn't too bad, because Yum and apt are similar in certain ways as far as how you execute certain commands. So I was able to pick up a lot very easily. Ironically, Fedora Core 6 was my very first Linux experience, and I used it for a few months, and I ended up going back to to, I don't even want to say it, but back to Windows, and I toyed with Linux off and on for a couple years, and before I found OS 10, and then I kind of stuck with OS 10 for about 4 or 5 years, and now I'm back on Linux, and today I'm using Fedora, ironically. But anyway, so as far as yum is concerned, if you want to install a package, sudo yum install. I don't have it on here yet, but I want it, so we'll do gparted. And that's it. So it's going to set up the install process. It's going to resolve whatever type of dependency issues it has, give you a list of what it wants to install, and then off it goes. So, much like sudo apt-get install gparted, sudo yum install gparted. Very, very similar. Now, you've got the main differences for those of you who aren't very familiar with Linux. Fedora is an RPM-based distribution, much like Debian's a .deb-based distribution. Ubuntu is a .deb-based distribution. We've got distributions like OpenSUSE or CentOS. They're all RPM-based. So you've got to deal with RPMs as opposed to .debs. But it's not too bad of a thing. I haven't had too many problems. Had a couple dependency issues here or there, but nothing too crazy. So that's where I am right now. I'm sticking with Fedora because they're heading in a direction that I really like. The system's been very stable for me. In fact, a lot of the packages that I've been getting from the Fedora repos or even RPM Fusion have been, in my opinion, less buggy than what I was getting in Ubuntu. For instance, FFmpeg right here. If I wanted to use FFmpeg to do a screencast, a proper one in Ubuntu, I couldn't use the ones they had in the repos. I had to actually compile FFmpeg and configure it from source, as well as the H.264 codec. So, but for Fedora, I just installed what was in the repos, and it works flawlessly. It works very well. So I'm very happy with Fedora, very happy with gnome-shell. I like it quite a bit. I really like the direction they're going in. I'm going to be sticking with it for a while. And so if any of you are interested in trying to find an alternative to Ubuntu, especially now with Unity, and you're torn on which way to go, and you'd like to get some more information on Fedora, I would love to do videos because it's what I'm using right now, and I can put out a number of tutorials on how to set up and do certain things if that's what you're interested in. Please leave a comment below. If you're interested in a certain type of video based on Fedora, let me know in the comment section below. I will definitely make tutorials for it. I'll cover it, and we'll talk about it. And if there's enough interest, I'll continue to do it. I think that you've got a lot of Linux users right now that are out in distribution limbo. They don't know which way to go. If that's you, Fedora 15 offers very, very good performance. It offers a very recent build of gnome-shell. It's not the most recent, but it's up to date. It's fully implemented, and it's working really, really well. So, again, if you're not happy with Ubuntu and the Unity interface, you want to find something else that'll work for you, but you want to get a little bit more information about it, please leave a comment below, let me know, and I'll make sure to cover it. Again, this is Lou. Hope you guys had a good time watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please do me a favor. Give the video a like. It helps my channel kind of get noticed and get the word out. And I appreciate it. All right, take care, everybody.